We are recording. Hang on. 3, 2, 1. Hey, hello, everybody. Pete Caliendo, host of the show, which loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds that love the challenge of status quo. And I am your host, Pete Caliendo, and this is Baseball Outside the Box, Zoom and live on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks, everybody in the U.S. and around the world for always joining us. We've got a full week of shows, and we've got a great one today. I've got to tell you, my mentors and also 3 of the best baseball coaches, not just in the U.S., but around the world. I know on the emails, I put down like 120 years of experience. I think it's even more. It might even be up to 150. So this is going to be outstanding. 3 ABCA Hall of Famers, Tom O'Connell, Donny Freeman, and Terry Ayers. So let's welcome all right now. Let me start with my good friend and president of ISG Baseball, Tom O'Connell. What's up, Tommy?
Not too much, Pete. Enjoy listening to your shows, and I'm looking forward to speaking with a couple of good friends of mine and all the people on board.
All right, and the check's in the mail, too. Next one, Terry Ayers. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete. How you doing, bud? Good to see you. Good to see you guys.
All right.
And the virus has kept us in the house so long, I don't even know what it's like to talk to anybody other than my wife.
Well, today you got a lot of people on the show, and there's going to be a lot of questions, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And finally, Donny Freeman. What's up, Donny?
Hey, enjoyed you having me on the show with 2 such distinguished gentlemen. I'm looking forward to this, and let's get going.
Well, I got to tell you, not only do we have 3 of the best coaches, but not easy to connect because they're so busy. To get these 3 guys all on one line, this is awesome, and I want to thank all of you. And as I said, these are 3 of my mentors. I've learned so much from them, and I'm looking forward to getting right to the questions. So let's get to the questions right away. Here's the first one that I'm going to ask, and then folks on Facebook, I see some people on Facebook already. Twitter, go ahead and ask questions by typing down in the chat section, even on Zoom, type it in the chat section as we go, and I'll try to get your questions in. Remember, it's the show that loves to get your questions in. That's the main thing here. It's not about me, but I'll get it rolling, get it started. And the thing I want to know from, and I'll start off with Tommy, the leadoff hitter. I basically want to know when you started in the coaching and teaching, because you guys have been teaching and coaching a long time, why did you get into it? And especially baseball. Why'd you get into baseball when you could have picked other sports?
Well, for me, it was just the love of the game. Played it, since I was probably 7 years old, and just loved the game. And I like basketball too. Wanted to get into basketball coaching, but and when I started teaching, there were no basketball coaching jobs available at the school, and became an assistant baseball coach, and the rest is history.
Hey, you could have been a bouncer. You could have been an engineer. You could have been all kinds of stuff. Why'd you pick teaching? I mean, you taught for a long time in high school. Not an easy thing to do.
I wanted to be an engineer, and had a teacher in high school. Went to a Catholic high school, and I had one of the brothers, and he said, "You're making a mistake." He said, "You should go into teaching. You really would be a good teacher." And so I took him at his word. And I don't think I've ever regretted one moment. In fact, I still miss the classroom now, and I've been out of it for 20 years. I subbed for for 15 of those 20, but I still miss being in the classroom every day.
Awesome. And Coach Ayers,
passion.
I want to get into some of that also, the in-depth stuff about the baseball teaching. Coach Ayers, 54 years teaching, I think, coaching. Not an easy task, man. Early on might have been easier, got harder as you went on. Why did you get into coaching?
I think it was probably the influence I had by coaches and teachers at a young age that I wanted to be like them, if you will. They were great role models. And I think I wanted to be a teacher and a coach ever since about 6th grade. So that's how I got started.
Hey, folks, keep in mind, this is the first time baseball has gone way out of the box. They have 3 guests on the show, so this is interesting. So we're going to try to do our best to get to all of them, get to all the questions also. Donny Freeman, was there something else that you wanted to be? Was teaching and coaching just a passion of yours from the start?
Well, Pete, I enjoyed my coaches so much, and they did so much for me as I was growing up. I knew I wanted to be involved as a coach. I did 3 sports through high school and college. I loved them all, but baseball especially. I thought I could play professional baseball, but I searched long and hard and couldn't find a scout who would agree with me. So the next thing would be to coach it, because it's such a great game, so unpredictable. You can plan all you want, and you can throw your plans out the window once the game starts. It's a great game.
Hey, were you expected when you got into coaching? Was it the challenges? Was it what you wanted to really, I guess what you expected basically?
Yeah. It was what I expected, but what I did find out real quickly is that I didn't know near as much about baseball as I thought I did, which that's probably the first thing you tell any young coach. You think you know baseball, you start coaching, and you find you don't know anything about the game. So that, to me, a daily basis, and hang around guys like Terry and Tom and Bill Percy and yourself, Pete, you learn so much just by discussions. Anybody that does not go to the ABCA convention every year, you're missing the boat. You can talk to the best minds in the country and learn so much. I encourage you to do that.
Terry, what's the toughest thing to teach in coaching in high school baseball? What is the toughest part about it? And if you want to add, what's the most fun of it?
Well, I really think the hardest part today is mental emotional management skills. Most of us have the physical skills are a pretty good idea. You can find a lot of that online and, work your mechanics and so on. But I really find that the longer I coach, the more time I really spend talking to players and developing their attitude, their mind, to focus on the task at hand. I don't think when we were growing up, that was taught very much. And as a player and as a coach, I think that's the hardest thing to learn how to manage and to learn how to cope with. And part of the reason is it changes so quickly. You can go from sailing as a pitcher, you can go from sailing along to the ball sailing out of here in one pitch. And you go from the top of the mountain to the bottom in one pitch. And emotionally, players need to learn how to deal with that. Absolutely. So I spend a lot of my time, I think, trying to talk about mental emotional management skills, developing them to think about what they're doing on the mound.
Tommy, what do you think?
I was going to agree wholeheartedly with Terry. That's, I think, what's really changed the most. I don't really care much about X's and O's anymore. What I work with is communication, and I think that's an important part. That's something that a lot of younger coaches don't know right away. That really communicating with the kids is so much more important than teaching balance points and release points and all that other stuff that we work on. That's important, but the greatest thing is just they're so emotionally fragile at the high school age, and those are the kids we work with. And I think it's very important to be able to communicate well with them and be able to listen. Don, how about you?
Oh, there's no question. There's so much more to the game than when we first started playing, Tom. You look at Dr. Ken Ravizza and Tom Hansen and Brian Kane. They add so much. The mental part of controlling your thought processes lets your physical talents surface, and trying to get people to understand that. Ron Wolford puts it best. He goes, if just taking ground balls and taking batting press makes us a great hitter, we would all be great, but for some reason we're not. So there's got to be a lot of other things that we have to add and help these kids understand that. Absolutely.
Love it. Hey, Coach Ayers, let me start with you on this one. The farm system for high school baseball is our youth, the youth organizations, and also the travel teams. What would you like to see happen at the younger levels to help develop younger players so that when they get to high school, there's certain things that maybe you don't have to change and you can go on to a different level?
Well, as a pitching guy, I would say teach the basics of biomechanics of throwing. A lot of kids don't throw correctly. They don't use their bottom half, especially. They rotate way too soon, for example, to be a little bit more specific. And I think if we provided better teaching, and the onus is really on us. I don't blame youth league coaches. They're mostly dads and volunteers, but I think the onus is on us. I don't think we've done a very good job in our country, in our communities to teach that. I know that we reach out and we try the best we can, but if we can get a kid biomechanically throwing pretty good at a 9, 10 years old, he's going to avoid arm problems, probably. And by the time he gets to high school, when we get him, 14, 15 years old, they're going to be pretty good. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons we've been kind of successful at where I'm at now, St. Charles North High School in Illinois, because our youth league programs have been pretty darn good. So I can see I'm reaping the fruits of that harvest, if you will.
Tommy, same thing, because I think everybody that's on the screen knows, we all love one of the biggest passions we all have is helping volunteer coaches, helping coaches in general, not just in the U.S., but around the world. So add that to Tom.
I wanted to piggyback on what Terry said. I think it's really important for high school coaches to work to give what they know back to the youth coaches in their areas. I think it's because, as Terry said, a lot of the youth coaches are basically dads, maybe an uncle, working with kids, and they don't have the time to go to clinics like most of the high school coaches do. I think we have to share our knowledge and communicate with not only with the players, but communicate with those coaches. Do things for the little league in your area. Do things for the youth leagues in your area. Help the travel team coaches out in your area, because I think high school baseball coaches today are so much more prepared than they were when I played back in the dark ages.
When Lincoln was president.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Donnie,
Yes.
go ahead.
I played for John Booth's traveling team.
Yeah.
I will do it.
Donnie, throw it your way.
Yeah, I agree so much. I've tried to do as much as I can with the youth programs in my area, offer to do clinics for coaches. Some leagues jump on it, and other ones, they don't think they need it. But all you can do is offer your services. And don't be locked in as a high school coach. Don't be locked into just your school borders. If you can help out a little league or something that's outside of your school area, that's fine. The idea is our whole job is to help people become better baseball players, which in the long run helps them become better people. So I think it's all in one basket, and we need to carry that basket as far as we can.
Tommy, on that same subject, what about particular skills that you think need to be worked on at the younger levels that we need to get better at, so that way players develop and when they get to high school, they're a lot better?
I think too much time might be spent on what I would call the cutting edge things at the younger level. I think younger coaches have to work more with basics. If just teaching proper running technique, for example, is never taught. How to run the bases. Too much time spent on things like throwing curveballs and things they don't need to work on. One of the books that I wrote, I kind of broke all skills down into things you should cover, things you must cover, and things you could cover if you had enough time. And I think every coach should make out a list of the things that they have to cover before a season starts, and make sure that they check off all those items on that list as the season goes along.
Yeah, and don't forget, folks, we're going to send you the show notes, and the show notes are going to have Tom's books on there also at humankinetics.com. They're all over. I think he wrote like 4 or 5 of them. Just great books, so check them out. Coach Ayers, you want to jump on that, or we go on?
No, let's go on. Well,
okay.
Other than the fact that the better we can teach, the better the kids are going to be. In fact, I changed it up a little bit. I didn't do this when I first started coaching. I want our seniors to really be our best coaches. And I'm talking about our senior pitching staff. I have our seniors teach our freshmen and sophomores. all the drills, all the skills, what to look for, how to do it. And it's my check on them that they know what they're doing, because if you can teach it, you pretty well know your subject matter. So I want our kids to be great coaches. That's a big change from when I started. Like Donnie said, I thought I knew a lot when I started coaching, only to find out that I probably didn't know very much at all. And I played a lot of baseball, and I played for a Hall of Fame coach.
I see.
And it just changed a lot since we started.
Coach Freeman?
Yes. I think one of the things that our objective should be is carryover. We cannot gain skills, or the kids can't gain skills. We can't teach skills if the kids don't come back. If they don't come back, there's a reason. If they're not having fun, if you have the same mundane practice day after day, thinking that you're really developing the kids and they're not having fun, they and their friends are going to disappear. We've got to work hard on making it interesting. Each lesson that we teach, we got to try to teach it a little different way, or present it a little different way, so they get so many varying experiences, and it keeps entertaining for them. If the kids get bored, that's one thing, but if the kids are bored, the chances are the coach is bored, and then it just kind of runs a dead end.
Coach, go ahead.
I see a question. Sorry, Pete.
Yeah, I'm going to get.
I see a question here about curveballs.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Hang tight.
Curveballs.
Yeah,
But
can you?
I think it fits right into this.
Oh, go ahead.
Because we're talking about things that coaches should be teaching, and I think if you're working with pitchers at a young age, I think just teaching them a fastball and a changeup. There's a lot of research that shows that that you can start teaching curveballs at a young age, but I feel that it's important that a kid has to learn how to find a strike zone, throw a good fastball, be able to change the speed with that fastball, and that will be enough to get them probably into high school and maybe probably beyond that. So throwing a curveball is not the necessary thing that I would teach every kid in Little League.
Well said. And Coach Ayers, the question is, when should they start throwing curveballs, and then add to that?
Well, let's get real. I'll get out there on the controversial side right now. Now you got to listen to the words I say. A curveball thrown correctly is no more damaging to the arm than a fastball. And in fact, the pitch that hurts the arm the most is a slider, because it's fastball arm speed, but you've got a little twist in the forearm and wrist. A curveball thrown correctly is a karate chop. It's straight up, straight down, thumb up to thumb down. How do you teach it? And instead of throwing a baseball, and I don't have one here, we throw hockey pucks against the wall. And we hold, yeah, there you go.
Look at, I got everything. Man of all trades.
You're the man.
What else?
Well, we throw hockey pucks against the wall, and it tells players, if you hold a hockey puck on each side, by the way, hockey puck is exactly the same size as a baseball. It's 9 inches around, and it weighs 5 ounces. Turn your hand turn your hand the other way. No, the other way. Grip it sideways. Put the hockey puck flat to your palm of your hand.
Okay,
Now grip, yeah, like that, but throw a curveball now. Grip it like a curveball and throw it against the wall.
Like that.
Yes, and throw, okay. And one of the other tricks to throwing a curveball, it's not a trick, it's an absolute, is firm it up, firm the grip, and set it deep. Okay, throw it hard. When you firm up your grip, it stiffens your wrist, so you don't have a tendency to twist your wrist. That twisting motion is what goes down to the elbow, which causes all kinds of Little League problems, elbow problems, Tommy John surgery, etc.
And
So,
Terry, since you're on there, just answer this: how should the hockey puck hit the wall? So
straight, the flat edge. That edge, the
Front
the
edge.
outs, yeah, it's going to hit the wall. It's going to hit the wall and come right back to you. Now, why is that important? Because that gives a player, it's not about us anymore. It gives a player instant feedback. That was correct. If it hits flat, it's just going to fall straight down and not come back to them. So if you throw the hockey puck correctly against the wall, it will hit the wall, bounce on the ground, and come right back to you. It's a great drill. It's one of our core drills, and we do it. I like to think we do it every day.
Awesome.
Not-
Coach Freeman, I want you to add to that. I just want to preface, this is baseball outside the box. So it's throw anything out there. There's no restrictions on this show.
That's right. I agree with everything that everybody's saying here. I love the hockey puck drill. I've done that before. Something as simple as a plastic Coca-Cola bottle that you can use if you hold your fingers straight out in that judo chop position and just work on flipping the bottle end over end so they get that action of getting the top spin. It's such an easy drill, and it's very easy to find that little tool. It's at everybody's house. Second thing is, we are kidding ourselves. If you get a kid past 11 or 12 years old, if we think, well, you got to wait, they say wait till they're shaving or whatever. Heck, I'm still waiting to shave. But wait till they're shaving before you teach them the curveball. If somebody that doesn't know what's going on to teach it, like Terry says, properly, these kids are going to experiment on their own. The next door neighbor kid's going to teach the younger kid how to throw a curveball, and they're going to destroy their elbow because they try to twist it. The hand goes under the ball instead of the fingers over the top. And I don't think you want to go have a lesson with the young kids. Today we're going to teach you how to throw a curveball. But when a kid asks you, he's already starting to think about it. And if you shut him down, he's going to find some other way to do it. And it'll be improper. So
Exactly right.
Coach O'Connell, I know you want to jump in.
No, I agree wholeheartedly, but I think we should really maybe concentrate on talking about some other things other than the specific. You've had great pitching coaches on here. You've had great teachers of the game that are working in Major League Baseball and college baseball, and I think a lot of people may want to know some things about just some basic coaching philosophies that we have,
and that was
do with our teams.
And
so,
that was one of the questions. One of
you.
the questions we wanted to add in there was about that. Simply, in all the years you guys been coaching, what's one of the major changes you've made, whether it be philosophy, whether it be how you're teaching, your practices, some of the major changes you've made throughout the years?
Let me jump on that right away. And I think both Terry and Don have had the same experience I had playing as kids and in high school and stuff, that we had coaches who basically told us everything.
absolutely.
We did what they said, and that's how we started coaching. I think as a young coach, that's basically the way I did it. It was my way or the highway, and I'm sure Terry had the same experience. I believe strongly in the concept of ownership, of team ownership, that the kids are the ones that play the game. They have to own the team. They have to have a sense that what they feel and what they would like to do counts. And so we do things, we have debriefings after practice where we talk about how we did in a practice. We start a practice with a team meeting, talking about what we need to work on. And I really believe that they have to be part of the process, not just the coach telling them what to do. So communication and ownership are two extremely important skills I think all young coaches need. And I think they'll learn it eventually, but if they work on it when they first start out, they're going to be much more successful early.
Tommy, add a little bit on the ownership part. What do you mean by ownership?
Well, I think the players have to feel that they're part of everything you're doing. If for example, if you played a bad game the night before, rather than I don't like to spend a lot of time in the outfield, talking to the teams. I've seen teams sit out in the outfield for a half an hour. I think you go out there, you go over a couple things, and you say, okay, let's clean up the field, let's get out of here, or let's get on the bus, let's get out of here. I think the next day at the start of practice, you just throw a question out. Okay, what do we do? What did we do wrong? And just you're surprised how many times these kids have a better understanding of what went on than sometimes the coach did.
Coach Ayers?
Well, we started a little bit with this. Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's right.
That is so obvious. But I think the biggest thing that I've changed probably as a coach, I'm not the answer man. You know, Shell years ago used to have the Shell answer man on TV. And you ask a question and he'd give you an answer. Now, only you old guys would know that. But anyway, I'm not the Shell answer man. I ask them questions and let them, they will find what you might have to ask a lot of questions, but they will finally get around to where you think they need to kind of be. When you just seem to be the guy that's got all the answers, you find out sometime you're going to meet somebody that knows a lot more about this thing than you do. So you got to be kind of careful there. You ask, what have I changed? I think by the way, Tom, we just had a coaches meeting a week ago, and we are going to stop post-game comments about the game we played. We are stopping it. We talked for probably an hour, our coaching staff, and we've come up to the conclusion that we're not getting much out of it. And why are we doing it? And we question ourselves. So we're not going to do that anymore.
Coach.
But I do think looking at issues and problems and mistakes have to be addressed. Saying that, you can be smart about the way you address them. And I think kids get more out of it, a lot more out of it, versus you talking about it and they need to go do it. So if you're messing up, let's say, a rundown, and we messed up the rundown, the guy would say, let's go back and review rundowns, guys. They'll get it. They know why we're practicing it. They can, and that's when you coach it up. That's when you fix the issues. It doesn't work. Today's kids, and I wish it was done when we were kids, I would have been a better player if I was showed and told how to do something by drill versus being told. I don't think we learn very much by being told. I think we learn a lot more by going through our mistakes, working out why that mistake happened, and fixing it through drills without scolding kids, if you will, post-game discussions.
Coach Freeman?
I agree. Most of the discussions that go after the game are what we did wrong. The kids know what some of the things they did wrong. They're aware of it, and they're beating themselves up as it is at the moment. And then we're out there sharing the same thing they're thinking about. I think it's far more beneficial to wait till the next day or the next practice and mention a couple things. And don't forget to throw in a few of the very positive things that happened during the game so that they feel like it's not just a drubbing. But everybody is calmed down. You know, when you're talking to an upset parent 2 days after a game, they're not as upset as they were right after the ball game. And people have a tendency to be more cordial to each other and listen to each other. And the kids are more willing to listen. If you think they're listening to you when you're telling about all the things they did wrong, they're tuning you out. I think one of the things that has changed so much, Tom, you're right on the nose, my way or the highway. That's the way so many of us were coached. Excuse me. And I think, and I've taken an approach, and I didn't do it consciously, but try to explain why we're doing it a certain way, rather than having 16 different kids over the next 2 hours ask you individually, why are we doing it that way? You can get this all out in the open right away. And then if there's a specific question, they can answer it. Kids, they want to know why they're doing it. They had 3 other coaches tell them to do it other ways, and God bless those coaches, but most of them, as you said, Tom, are dads or uncles or older brothers that played baseball, but they didn't really know a lot about it. Some guys, their claim to fame as being a baseball guy is they had a great baseball card collection, and that's as far as it went. But now they're coaching their grandson or whatever, okay? And so the kids are confused because they were told this and told that. If you tell them why we're doing it a certain way, then that makes sense for them. They're much more apt to take on the bull by the horns and go with what you're saying.
Pete, let me interrupt once, real quick.
That won't be that won't be the first time, so no worries.
Quick story.
Yeah.
Several years ago, 5, 6 years ago, we got a player, and I said his name's Connor. I won't tell you his last name. I said, Connor, what'd you think of Coach post-game speech today? He said, Coach, it was really good. He had all the parts. He went over everything. It was really good. I said, tell me what was he thinking about? What he told you that was so important? His response was, Coach, I got a bad memory. I don't know. I was just real hungry. That's what kids are thinking about. They're hungry after a game.
Exactly.
They know the coach is trying to do a good job, but they don't remember diddly squat. Why are we doing it? It's silly.
Hey, Tommy, on that point, Coach Freeman brought up a good point about the parents. You know, times are changing a little bit, and you know, I come from a different era when I feel like there's a three-pronged educational system: coaches, players, and parents. But there's also a fine line in high school baseball or any baseball where parents are involved. Talk about today. Have you changed anything in how you deal with parents?
When I first started coaching, we never had such things as parent meetings. I'd get to know the parents because they were out at the game, sitting in the stands, and someone would come up to me and talk to me. Now it's every school probably has spring sports, winter sports, fall sports meetings. Parents are there. They have kids signing, parents and kids signing agreements about how they're going to behave, et cetera, et cetera. I believe in that kind of a meeting. I always have a meeting at the beginning of the year where we go through the roles. I talk about it as roles rather than rules. And the role of a coach, the role of us as coaches, what they can expect from us as a coach, what we expect from their sons and daughters as players, and then I also talk about what we expect from the parents. And I think, and I put this in a form of a handout, 3 columns: coaches, parents, players. So everything's in writing, and the expectations are there. And hopefully they're not going to question them. I go over it right away in the very first part of the season before you even start. That doesn't mean that parents are always going to be adhering to those rules or those expectations and not calling you up at 10 o'clock at night complaining. But we also have a 24-hour rule. And I always tell my parents, if you feel a certain way after a game, I'm not going to talk about playing time. That's one of the things I never talk about with parents. But if you feel a certain thing after a game, wait till the next day. You may not feel the same way the next day, and then talk to me about it. Don't come up to me after the game or in the middle of the game, which I've had happen too. And I'm sure some of you guys have had those same experiences. So
Yep.
This is a true story. At Catholic Central High School, which I coached at, we won 5 state championships. Great bunch of kids, a great program. We really worked hard on developing a great program there. And all the kids contributed. On the way, this is, I think it was the third or fourth one that we won. On the way, we had a rain out the night before. On the way, we had to play a 7 o'clock game the next day in the morning, or get to the field like at 6:30. So I'm on the way from the hotel to the field and get a call from one of the parents asking why his kid isn't in the starting lineup. We're playing for a state championship in an hour. So that's that kind of thing. I think you can avoid if you really, most of the time you can avoid it by just making things clear at the beginning of the year. And I think that's a huge difference when we first started, that we really have to incorporate the parents into those meetings.
I'm going to let Coach Ayers relax a second so he can gather his thoughts and get more excited. I'm going to jump to Coach Freeman because I know he's ready to roll. Coach Freeman.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would like to thank Jen for tuning in. I Haven't had much contact with her for several years, but thank you for your question and thanks for tuning in. The parent role is definitely different. And one thing we gotta understand is we love their kids. They love their kids. We want the best for them and they want the best of everything for them, and they want it without having to work very hard. So they have a different outlook. So we have to be a bit careful with that. I had the same rule, 24 hours at least, and then we all can talk much easier about it, not so emotional. But it is a different paradigm. There used to be a day where, sometimes the parents wouldn't even come until the championship games. They would, they had other kids and other siblings in the families, and they didn't come to everything. Now they want to be involved in everything. And somebody has to be the chief, and the rest of them are the Indians, and the parents are included in that. And it's going to get worse. I don't see it getting better, but it's going to get worse. But if you communicate with them and let them know what their roles are and support their kid, they don't realize how much pressure and how frustrated they make their kids on the field when they're constantly yelling out coaching techniques and pointing out to their kid what they did wrong in front of everybody. And they hate that drive home in the car, the grilling that they go through. And so we just got to make the kids' experiences as good as we possibly can so they want to come back.
Awesome. Coach Ayers, can you do this in 10 seconds? No, just kidding.
No. There we go. It's not working for us, is it? Parents are getting veteran coaches fired, 30, 40 years of coaching, and they're getting fired because of a parent. So,
and weak administration.
yes. And now I have a different role. I'm the assistant coach. And I wish this would have happened a long time ago. I flipped the box. I now approach the parents. I'm the aggressor to the parents. They're not used to it. So I flip the switch. I go up and talk to them. How do you think Billy Bob's doing? Where do you see him? How do you think he's doing? And then I will get to the questions that I think they need to address. How's he doing on his homework? Is he getting enough sleep? How many hours of sleep is he getting? Are you monitoring that sleep? They're not used to hearing this. What about his nutrition? Are you monitoring his nutrition and his hydration? Those are the things you're responsible for. So I flipped the switch on parents a little bit. What's happened? We rarely have parents that don't agree with us. We also try to spend a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, mentally, emotionally, again, talking to the players about where they're at and communicate that to their parents. And if they don't, they know that I might even ask their parents, and I have. Did Johnny talk to you about what we talked about yesterday? No, he never said a word. Really? Really? He didn't say anything to you? I said, I told him very specifically to go home and tell you why he wasn't going to play this week. And they look at me like I'm silly. And I said, they didn't tell you that he's been complaining about his arm being sore all week? He didn't tell you the fact that he's had an upset stomach or whatever? He didn't talk to you about these things that we talked about? They don't know how to respond. So I just think what we're doing currently with coach-parent relationships, and like it or not, we're in a relationship with every player's parents. We've got to be better at it. We've got to hold them accountable as well as ourselves and as well as the players. So I go out and seek, and I say to the parents, I'm going to try to have a relationship with you because I want to build a relationship when things are good. And we have had conversations about things before. I don't want to wait till you're upset to have our very first conversation. So I've tried to switch that. Now, I don't think every head coach can do that. He's too busy. So I urge some of you young assistants to get out there and start talking to people. Parents are not our enemy. They love their kid. They sometimes just don't understand. They don't have the depth of knowledge that we have. And it's important that we do our best. We're supposed to be the professionals, right? We're the professionals. And if we don't, you go to the doctor's office, you don't want to hear from the guy, you're not feeling well. You already know that. They want to know specifically what's going on. So when I tell a parent, your boy didn't tell you we talked yesterday? Holy cow, I specifically told it. They don't know what to say. Now, you got to make sure you talk to the kids, too.
What Terry's saying here basically gets to the whole crux of the matter, though, with coaching. It's about relationships. It's about your relationships with your players. It's about the relationships with your assistant coaches and your staff. And it's about the relationship with your parents. And that's really a key to, I guess it's a key to coaching today, more than it was 30 years ago. Or when Donny Freeman started back.
Or it didn't exist 30 years ago, Tom. Coaching relationships with parents weren't created, 30 years ago. They weren't around.
No, that's true.
Absolutely. Coach Freeman, you mentioned the ride home. What advice do you have for, let me be parents out there or even coaches that might educate their parents on that ride home? What advice you have to them as far as what kind of conversation do you have, if you even have any?
Well, yeah, I really feel that, the kid is analyzing what happened in the game, where he made mistakes and where the occasional thing that he does right, because we know how much failure there is in baseball. But whether it be baseball or softball, doesn't matter. But when the parents immediately volunteer their advice and the kid is looking at, well, my dad never played baseball, my mother never played softball, or here we go again, and they just shut them out. The best thing to do is talk about anything and everything but that. And when the kid asks a question about the game, what do you think about the play in right field today? Well, they're seeking some information, and then it's a good time to communicate. You're better off to let things go for a couple of days and then go out in the yard and play catch with their son or doing something and practice on a couple of things that they didn't do quite so well. So it's not such an intimidating, pointing the finger, you screwed this up, let's make it better.
Hey, Tommy, on that, you're going to add, and I just want you to add this too as you add. You got the fundraising aspect. Some people fundraise, and then they expect players to play. That was one of the questions just came up.
Yeah.
Oh, it did come up. Well, one of the things I wanted to kind of piggyback on this is that all of this that we're talking about right now basically gets down to there are attributes that have been given over the years to high performing teams and high performing groups. And one of those is that there's clear roles and responsibilities. And I think what Terry talked about and what I mentioned and what Don said fit into that idea of having clear roles. It's very important, and clear responsibilities for players, parents, coaches. And they have to know this from the beginning of the season, from day one of practice, maybe day one of school, what those roles are, and they have to be clear. And that gets into this whole communication piece and ownership piece and everything else. It all kind of dovetails together. And if you're really clear about this, the whole fundraising aspect won't come up. I've had a lot of interesting conversations about that over the years, especially when I was at the Catholic school. We used to always take a trip to Arizona or Nevada or Kentucky. We took spring training trips, and we had to raise a lot of money to do that. But if I was always clear about the roles of the parents and the players, and didn't have many problems with that. So Terry, Don, maybe you've had some different experiences than I have. Go ahead.
Well, I've done a lot of trips with kids, gone to Australia several times, that kind of thing. And they had to do fundraising. And the vast majority of the time, the kids and the parents were very cooperative because they saw what kind of a great experience that was. And they didn't have any demands. But you know what's really funny is that we as coaches, we don't want to get chewed out by the parents because we lost the ball game. But I've always tried to make a commitment to my players that if you're going to be with us and training every day, we're going to do everything we can to get you in the game. It may be an at bat, it may be a couple innings on defense, but we'll do everything we can. And most of the time, the kids are very acceptable to that response. But many times, the parents, they're the ones that have the problems with it, and so they cause problems at home. But I haven't had too many problems that way at all. But here's something, people, you know, I've talked to my assistant coach. I said, I'm going to start these two kids. What are you going to do that for? Well, because they need to play a little bit. They've been at practice. Yeah, but we got to win the game. I go, do you want to put them in the last 2 innings of the game when the game can be decided by mistakes? Or do you want to put them in early so that we have more experience at the end of the game? And they go, oh, I never thought of that. But you can put them in at different times and not have to be forced to, in your philosophy, to get kids on the field right toward the end of the game when the game can be decided. The bottom line is, once the game is over, does it really matter? Nobody's going to remember that game down the road. You can't even, half the time you can't even remember who played in the World Series last year. So, and this year we won't have to worry about it.
Yeah, Coach Ayers, I'm going to go to a new question, and I want to ask you about this. You know, I'm sure all three of you have the greatest players, the finest players. They're no discipline problems. You know, at least that's what the parents say. But look, reality is, kids are kids, and sometimes they're not playing. Sometimes they've had a bad day at home, whatever it may be, and you've got a discipline issue on the field, whether it be a practice or games. Has that changed how you deal with it nowadays? And also, how do you deal with those difficult situations, Coach Ayers?
Wow. Talk about jumping in a frying pan there.
Throw you a screwball.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say about relationships with parents, you're as strong as your weakest link. And if your weakest link is your parent, then you're not addressing the issue. No, we all understand that. It's really pretty simple. Dealing with players now that are really a problem. I hate to say this because some real good friends and Hall of Fame coaches have been fired because they got into bad relationships with parents. Unfortunately, it appears to me that the administration of the schools involved did not handle it very well, and the coach ends up being fired. And it's just a sad, sad thing. We've talked about this as a coaching staff a lot. We've changed our position. In fact, I don't know exactly when we changed this. Basically, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it to the kid. One of the best coaches I know is a guy named Coach Bench. He sits. He sits. We don't talk about it. We don't tell him he's sitting. He sits. Pretty soon, things will change. It's better than being fired. It just breaks my heart that coaches get fired. Guys that have spent their entire adult life coaching get fired. Really? Because one parent is upset because John is not in the starting lineup. So we also, I think a lot of that goes back to the culture you try to build within your team. We spend an enormous amount of time building culture. We don't talk about it. We call it the North Star Way. We give them examples. We talk about it. We put it up on the press box. We wear shirts, wear T-shirts. We talk about it probably every day. That's the North Star Way, guys. So we try to build a culture to where that doesn't develop. And if you think you're going to, if you have the feeling that you're going to have a bad situation with parents,
Head it off early.
Exactly. I don't know who said that, but like I said, I go talk to the parents. Hey, I know you're upset about John not playing here. I get it. Has John told you that we've had a discussion about this? No. What do you mean? I've talked to him for the last 4 days about this. They have no clue. And John's not going to tell them. So we can do a lot by being more proactive. We're as strong as our weakest link in the kinetic chain. And if the kinetic chain is going to get you fired by the AD and the principal, superintendent, wherever it goes, head it off.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to have your ducks lined up now. You just don't go out there shooting your mouth off and not know what you're talking about. So, one of the things I try to do every day is talk to every player in the team. Now, I talk to the pitchers a lot, but if we're not talking to kids, it's hard to find out really what's going on through, how you doing today? It's amazing what some of the players have told me. Coach, I need to talk to you. Wow. And we have this discussion, and it just floors me. So we're more than a coach. I see these kids more than their parents do. I mean, this is a big time job for us. Now, I got a big asset that a lot of guys don't have. Tom doesn't have too much of it. I don't know how. Donnie's got a lot of. It's cut right here. What's that stuff? Gray hair. Gray hair. But that's no hair.
That's short hair.
Yeah. Gray hair will buy you a little bit of respectability. But I think also it's a lot of the way you approach the parents.
Can I jump in here just a second?
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
For about 10 years, I was part of a leadership team that we worked with schools all throughout the state of Wisconsin. It was a fighting drug abuse and teaching leadership skills to athletes and coaches. And each summer we used to have meetings of our team. There were 10 of us, and we would one summer the Hazleton group came in from the Minnesota area that worked with substance abuse of players and athletes all over the world, and they gave us some really good skills for talking to a player that's a discipline problem, and that's I think where the original question was: how do you handle problems with players? And basically it's a method of communication, and I've used it. I used to have it inside of my desk drawer. So if I was talking to a kid, I'd pull it out so I had it to work off of. They used to have those little things in desks you pull out. I think they used it for typewriters or for writing. I don't know what they were for. Just a little slab you pulled out. And basically it started out by talking about some positive things with the player. I care about you. I care. There's 5 points to it. I care, I see, I feel. And you say something about what you care about the person, what you see the person doing, and then the reaction that may be what you feel would happen because of what the person is doing, and then basically shut up. The next part is listen. And I've sat with kids that I've had to discipline for sometimes 20 minutes and just sat there listening until they finally started talking. As Terry said, it's amazing what kids will say when you listen and when they trust you. And all of a sudden the kid will start talking, and then basically you can get into a conversation about this problem, whatever the problem might be. And then the last two parts of it, it's first I care, I see, I feel, listen. The last two parts are I want and I will. And basically the I want part is, well, I want you to do certain things, and the I will part will be what the consequences will be if you don't. And part of this has to be how you're going to help the person deal with this issue. And high school kids really need that. There was a sign I used to have in the back of the door of the coach's office. And I don't know where it was, one of those motivational signs you used to see in malls. They used to have these stores selling posters. And it was that every person has a little sign hung around their necks saying, make me feel important today. And I do the same thing Terry just talked about. I don't try to talk to them every day, but at least once a week, I have to make sure I talk to every kid on my team about something non-baseball related. Just basically, how you doing in class? How's your friendships? Your girlfriend? How's everything with the family? What you're eating? All kinds of stuff. Just to talk with the people once a week. And so when you deal with discipline, you've already had that process in mind or your background going, or you've been communicating with the kids. And I'm sorry I'm talking so long here.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good, Tommy. Coach Freeman, if you got something to add, if not, I'll ask you a different question. I'll throw it to you.
I got something to add. It's kind of like the 2 C's. It's consistency and communication. Too often people get caught up with the kids misbehaving, but I don't really want to do too much because he's our best pitcher and he's pitching today or whatever. And if you're going to have your kids trust you, they have to know from the bottom, the JVs to the varsity, they have to know that whatever someone does and there's a disciplinary action, it's consistent with everybody. Okay, that's important. And the communication, whether it be with parents, like Terry is big on that, and that I agree 100%. And talk to the kids as often as you can, and not just the varsity kids. Talk to the JV kids, the freshman kids. If you can do all that within a week, that's fantastic. But let them know that you, as a head coach, care about a kid that's going to be 2 years away from the varsity, and let them know that he's not in oblivion. He's part of the program. You are now in our program, and we want you to succeed, and we want you to do well in the classroom and all those kinds of things. So consistency and communication are the 2 key things to make things go as smooth as you can possibly make it.
Tommy?
And one further thing about this leadership workshop that I used to be a part of, we did this every year. We found out there was a great disconnect between what the players wanted and what coaches expected of them. And there's a huge disconnect there. And there's a study that was done by the University of Michigan. It's Michigan State University.
Yes,
it's
Michigan
been
State.
repeated several times over the last 20 years or so. But what kids want out of athletics is basically the number one thing was have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun. Nothing, and winning and losing is somewhere about 9 or 10 on the list. So we as coaches and parents, I think, feel this way too sometimes, that it's much more important to win or lose a game or get a hit or something like that. I always say to my parents when I give workshops with parents, the 5 or 6 most important words you can say to your kid after a game are, "I love watching you play." And that's basically where it should stop. You go to McDonald's and get a malt or something like that after that. Don't be belittling on the way home or talking so much about the game. I love to watch you play. There's 6 words. It's 5 or 6. So that's enough said about that. But it's just basically having fun is important, and that's what we're in this game for. We're trying to develop future leaders of tomorrow. And we want them to be well balanced and not maniacs, I guess. Right.
Hey, Coach O'Connell, I love the hats that you're changing, the international man. Don't think I didn't notice. I'm sure everybody else did.
I did too. Yes, I did too.
That was awesome. Coach Ayers.
He had Germany on there.
Germany was up there? Absolutely.
There we
Coach
go.
Ayers, Coach O'Connell, he brought up a big word, fun. I mean, I hear it all the time. Now, I also know knowing one thing, but doing it are way 2 different things. And I keep hearing, let's have fun, let's have fun. So let's talk about what that really means, whether it be in practice, games, whatever it may be. How do we do that?
Well, there's lots of ways of doing it. Keeping it moving. Okay, talk positive. Give them ways of saying things to make it fun. I'm the pitching coach. I sit in the bullpen. We have a problem. The hitters want to come out to the bullpen. Why? Because we're having fun. What do? I guess I do this a lot because the players tell me that. I tell them stories about a play that I just saw. And I'll I'll make, it's funny and it's fun. And I try to, a guy that you coach, Pete, this is one of our core stories. Matty Noakes gets traded to the Yankees. Okay. And as he's traded to the Yankees, there's 2 outs. It's his first game with the Yankees. Routine ground ball hit to the shortstop. Derek Jeter. Oh my goodness, Derek Jeter. Routine play. Matty Noakes goes in the first entry to the dugout, the Yankee bench. He didn't back up the play. After the play's over, routine play. Jeter walks down and says to him, Matty, you're a Yankee now. We don't take plays off. Guys, what was his purpose with that? Why did Jeter talk about not taking plays off? Do you understand what he's trying to get Noakes to realize? That's part of this cultural concept that I think is outside of mental emotional management skills. That may be the biggest thing, that if you've got to develop a culture.
And then part of that culture, Terry, is your history. You've already touched on the history, telling stories, building tradition. All of these things are really, really key, I guess, to getting an identity in a team. I talk about identity all the time. And also, I think the one thing about the 3 of us here that I guess a lot of people that have been in the game for it's about 150 years, I think, between the 3 of us here.
I didn't want to give that away.
And I am so proud to be in the Hall of Fame with these 2 guys. We're 3 out of what, 24? So we're about 1/8 of the Hall of Fame right here, or 1/6, 1/8, whatever. My math wasn't always good. I was good in English, but not math. It's to have enthusiasm. It's good to have. It's to have enthusiasm and energy. I mean, that's what kids start believing in you when you have that enthusiasm. I mean, I can't throw batting practice anymore, but I'm still enthusiastic about things with the kids. And I'll do stupid things. Like, I remember a kid, I'll never forget the kid's name, Timmy Olszewski, played for me at Pulaski High School. Great kid. We're doing drills indoors. It's 15 degrees outside yet at the beginning of the baseball season when we started up here in Wisconsin. Snow on the ground. And I remember it just like it was yesterday. And we're working on ground ball technique, and he did it right for the first time. I just stopped. I yelled, screamed at the top of my voice, stopped everything. I said, hey, in this day in history, mark this on your calendars. On this day in history, Timmy Olszewski bent his legs on a ground ball. And it was like, the kids just started laughing. But yet that's part of that history. And that's part of having fun. I mean, that I'm sure those kids still remember that day. And that's just, that's part of enthusiasm and energy that I think the coaches have to keep and make as part of their daily routine.
Coach Freeman.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. I know you want to add. Hey, look, I know this. I'll just throw this at you. I know if I'm going to practice, I know I've got a responsibility. I got to get better. But I know that if I'm having fun at it, that's going to speed up the process. And I can't wait to get back. So
Right.
How do we do that as coaches?
Well, I touched a little bit on it earlier. We have to be creative and come up with several different ways to get the same thing accomplished. If we have one drill, if we just do the same drill for rundowns every time, the guys get bored. They're not focusing, so they're not learning. They're not solidifying concepts. They're just going through the motion and hope this 10 minutes gets over early so they can go on to something else. And so it's our responsibility to create fun. It's not the kids' responsibility. It's our responsibility. Joking with the kids always works out great. We had one kid that was like 0 for 20, and he hadn't been on base forever. And he got a base hit, and he goes to first base, and I yelled across the diamond, "Bobby, this is first base, this is Bobby." And everybody on both teams just cracked up. And afterwards he came up and goes, "Great line, coach. I appreciate that." And went on with it. He was 1 for 21 at that point. Okay. And he still enjoyed himself. But, you know, you got to do those things, and don't be afraid to make fun of yourself.
Oh yeah, definitely.
When you are a head coach or assistant coach, if you can do things to make fun of yourself to get the kids laugh, that's the biggest fun thing they have for it. It's awesome.
Coach Ayers, speaking about that, I just learned a ton. Some of the coaches learned a bunch of things. I'm going to go back to practice because one of the questions is about practice organization, but I'm going to go back to practice, and I learned some stuff. But I also told the kids something different for the last 3 months, and I'm going to make a change. How do I do that? Because they may look at me and say, well, you told me this, now you're telling me this.
Well, we just went through that. We basically revised our leadoffs technique and so on, and and how we steal bases and what our technique is. It's a big change for us. We were a very traditional leadoff team. We've changed that. First of all, the coaches got to buy in. Everybody in the coaching staff's got to buy in. Then you got to get the players to buy in. And you got to know what you're talking about. And you got to cite examples, and you got to measure. I'm moving out of the way here.
So you're going to tell them on Coach Caliendo's Baseball Outside the Box, you learned this, and right?
Exactly. I got some new stuff, guys. And here, for example, here it is. And I know you won't be able to see it, but this is for real. We timed our guys their way and then our way 3 times each, okay? And we did it for 4 different days. So we got a pretty good set of numbers. Guess what? Our new way statistically works. We proved it to them, each and every one of them. When you do that, you got to invest some time, okay? But they buy in quick, okay? And as soon as they start buying in, especially your leaders, what was the result? Ryan Teasy, our senior, didn't get to play this year. As a junior, set a school record of stolen bases. We went from 104 stolen bases as a team a year to 154 bases in a year. Do you think our kids bought in? Do you think we talk about that in terms of our culture? Here's why we're going to do this, guys. Here's our stats. Here's what, when we changed, what happened. What's going on? Same guys. How does a guy get to 35, 40 stolen bases in 1 year? Okay, so you've got to teach it. You got to talk about it. You got to convince them, and you got to prove it, not with just your belief, because kids really don't care much about our belief. They want to know what the stat is, okay, and show them. Okay, so that's basically, I think, how you have to do it. And it takes a lot more work. It's harder. Kids are smart today. They have the internet. Hey, by the way, did you guys ever learn anything when you're 14 years old on the internet? Internet didn't exist.
I couldn't
Right?
spell internet.
Yeah, exactly. But today, look what they got going today. How many showcases did you go to, Donny Freeman? None. Zero.
None.
Why?
Zero.
Never
Yeah.
existed.
Exactly.
Okay. Look how things have changed today. We as coaches gotta appreciate that. Okay, we've got to get up with the speed of what's going on. Rhapsodo, what? What's that? Some kind of a new song? I don't know what that.
Rapsodo. It's Italian.
It's outside.
I thought it was Rhapsody in Blue. I thought it was some kind of a music thing.
To kind of emphasize something.
Go ahead,
Terry,
Tommy.
kind of emphasize something Terry said too about being on the same page. I think the coaching staff, I think this is extremely important. They have to use the same language when they talk about things. And I put out a little one-page dictionary with our coaching staff about what the words are that we want to be using for things, because there's different ways you can call certain techniques. It's important that everybody's on the same page with language. You're using the same words so nobody gets confused.
Absolutely. Listen, guys and gals, hang tight 1 second. I just want to mention what Coach Ayers was talking about timing, because there was a question. He's talking about if you're taking a lead off, the technique that you're using. He lets them use that technique first. They time them. Then they use the second technique, which is a new one they learned, and then they time them to prove to them. That could be used for fly balls on the right side, left side angles. And Coach Ayers, I only brought that up real quick because there was a question about the timing, what you were talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
I bring that up. And second, in the show notes, I'm going to teach Coach Ayers how to take a picture of that note that he has, and we're going to email it to everybody in the show notes, so you'll get that photo of what he had in that he showed you on the screen. Okay. Let me start with Coach Freeman on this one. This is a question from Guy. I think it was Guy Anderson, as far as practice organization, because, you know, that's an important topic, and we've got about 20 more minutes left to go. When you talk about practice organization, you wanted to know what's the most important aspect of practice organization. If you had to pick one, what's the most important area of it?
Defense and pitching. Years ago, I was in a state tournament and talked to a guy I had a lot of respect for. He was a 35-year football, basketball, and baseball head coach in high school. Unbelievable. Another Gordie Gillespie. But I asked him, I said, if you were going to change anything that you did when you were coaching baseball early in the years, what would you do? And he said, that's the easiest question I've ever had to answer. He said, I'd spend much less time on hitting and much more on defense. If we can keep the other team from scoring more runs, we don't have to score as many. Okay. And he goes, in the limited time that we have to work with our kids in batting and whatever, we're not going to make them great hitters. They're either going to be able to make some degree of contact or they're not. And he goes, but we can sure change a lot of things on defense and pitching and those types of things. One of the biggest things I think in practice organization that we make a mistake, we as coaches that have a tendency, you get tied up. You're in the classroom all day. You're a Tom O'Connell, and you're in the classroom teaching English, and things come up, and you just don't have time to really sit down and make out a good practice plan. It happens to so many coaches, and as a result, they just kind of do the same thing they did 2 days ago or all week, and the kids get really bored. We got to have variety. You got to have variety so the kids don't know exactly what's coming, or as you're working on something, they're thinking, okay, the next we're going to go into this, and I hate doing that, and whatever. We have to take responsibility to create a variety environment, and like I said before, teaching showing different drills to get to the same thing. Tom O'Connell has written a great book on drills, as has Pete Caliendo and several other people that I know over the years. And take the time to go through there and pull some of those drills out, make little tweaks off of them, but keep your kids thinking, inspired, and they're going to perform so much better. Perfect. Coach O'Connell on practice organization.
Practice organization. Learned well, I used to post all my practice schedules up in the locker room before each day, and I don't do that anymore because nobody reads them. We get out to the field and they don't know what's going on. I stole the technique from Donny Freeman years ago, and I have a lot of drills and games. I use games instead. I like to call them games instead of drills because I like to keep things game-like as much as I can. And I list everything under, and I can supply this also, and I'm sure Don could do it. I have pitching, catching, infield, outfield, base running, little columns, and under each column is a drill or a technique that we're going to work on. And I just have this on a laminated big heavy piece of cardboard, And I circle with a erasable marker every day what we're doing and we're working on in practice. And the kids see that, and that's basically all I use for practice organization.
Love it.
It's
Oh,
hard to
cheers.
talk about it, but it's easier to show it to you.
Yeah, no problem. We'll send it to the email within an email to
I
everybody.
will.
Coach Ayers, our good friend and Hall of Famer, also ABCA Hall of Famer Bill Percy asks, he says we're consistently hearing new ideas and learning new concepts. How much freedom do you give to players to make their own adjustments in game, practice, or wherever, trusting their input? I think there's a big one because I know really young kids, I believe, need to have a little bit more freedom in playing the game because we control them too much. So what do you think on that? Coach Ayers, you there?
Yeah. I'm trying to process your question because it's not an easy answer.
No, Coach Percy's question.
Well, of course, it's Percy.
Blame it on Percy.
Percy. He sits in the back of the room, okay?
He's throwing you the curveball.
Yeah, stirring the pot.
Curveball. Get the hockey puck.
Yeah. And then he comes up with these real tough questions, Well, it kind of depends on what they're asking. Now, if
I'm going to throw one at you.
Yeah, give me a hockey puck or what?
No, hockey puck won't go through the screen. But stealing. I mean, are players allowed on their own to steal, or they've always been told? Running the bases, taking extra base.
In our program, we've got guys that are automatic green lighted. Automatic, okay? You're automatic. I was thinking of more like a technique in relationship to pitching. And I want to do this. That's what I was kind of thinking about.
That's a good one too.
Okay, so I would ask them why they wanted to do that. And show me what that looks like. And we would talk about it. And I might have no issue with it at all. So if that works for you, that's probably going to be fine with me. But if it's something that I think could end up hurting them, especially their arm, we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to give them some evidence that why I believe it would not be helpful to do. And I'll give you an example of that. Sleeper stretch. We do not do it. Why? It loosens the shoulder capsule. So you ask all the orthopedic doctors in North America, you want a tight capsule or do you want a loose one? They're going to tell you tight. Well, a sleeper stretch loosens that capsule up. So
I hate to ask you, are you going to show this stretch or are we going to have to get your medical insurance?
Well, probably insurance, but basically you put it out on your back and
there you go.
Have somebody pull your arm down and do a sleeper stretch. And it really stretches the capsule. I don't like it. There's some evidence why I don't like it. I even asked you to ask one of our friends about doing the sleep. There it is right there. This lady's demonstrating it right there.
Jen.
Okay. I don't particularly like it. I think it loosens up the capsule. I want the shoulder capsule for pitchers tight and not loose. So we would discuss that. I would probably go home and immediately email them some medical research and showing them why I prefer them not doing it. So it doesn't happen very often, quite frankly. I'm more likely asked questions about what I think about, and they want to know why we don't do something. And if I can't explain it, that's on me. And I said, well, I don't have a good explanation for that, but let me think about that a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with having a coach. We can't know everything there is to know. We're all still learning.
That's all right.
I don't want to be the answer man. I don't want to be the answer man. I want to be the guy that asks questions. let's look at this. Here's some things I've seen on research. And there's a lot of fine websites out there. So, you know, if I don't know something, we're all looking up.
And that's what we're all here for. We're a great reference, so we can bounce things off each other. Coach Freeman, Coach Nimitz says, what's the biggest thing that's changed in the game today compared to earlier on?
I was just thinking about that earlier. All this new stuff that's coming out on baseball, all this new stuff, it's everywhere. To the people that are in the baseball world right now, that are just getting started, it's new stuff, and they think this is just the norm. We're all old enough that we grew up when baseball was so traditional and you didn't ask questions. Ron Wolfer said, if you want better answers, ask better questions. Okay. People were afraid to ask questions. I mean, weight training, you wouldn't do any weight training. That's tightens up your muscles and you can't throw. And all these fallacies that were shared by baseball, coaches lost their jobs. Brent Strom lost a couple jobs because he was doing things that the normal traditional people didn't want to have done, and he lost his job. And Brent's pretty good at what he does.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
More than pretty good. More than pretty good.
But the game has changed so much, and so those of us that are as old as we are, we've had to change a lot just to keep up with the flow, but it's made the game so much better. It was mentioned earlier that we coach so much different than we were coached. We were told what to do and when to do it under no uncertain terms. And a lot of guys went by the wayside of baseball. It was the national pastime, and people would play it for a while and they'd be gone because back to the Michigan State study, they weren't having fun. Okay. So there is so much new that's still got to present itself, and we can't fight against it. You know, Rhapsody was mentioned, and I see the value in it, but for all of us in high school or junior college or whatever, we can't afford those things. Go Spartans, love it. We can't afford those things, so we don't pay any attention to it. But we need to learn more about it. Need to look more about it. There's no.
You know, it's interesting, Coach Freeman, and I'm going to get to Coach O'Connell. It's interesting, folks. If you caught one thing, you notice we also have fun on the shows too. Again, makes it more interesting, right? So continue to do that. Since we're on Rapsodo and the technology, Coach O'Connell, we got about 10 more minutes left here. You know, Don brings up a good point. It's hard. You know, how do we use it? Is there any technology that you have used that has helped you as a coach to make some changes because of the science behind it?
Long time ago, Jerry Weinstein told me his most important piece of technology he had at his disposal, and Jerry's one of the best coaches who ever lived, right, was a video camera. And everybody's got a smartphone nowadays.
Yep.
You got that phone, and there's so many great apps out there. I can't remember the names of them all. There's so many great apps that you can use to record players doing things and then go over it with them later on just by picking up your phone and saying, here's what you did here. You can draw lines on it. You can make arrows and little stars, whatever you want to do with these things. And I can't remember the names of them all. I think that in itself, that's the number one thing. I use the Ball Coach a lot. It's a pocket radar device. I've got 3 of them. We use one at school. It's a cheap, inexpensive device that you can use to keep track of bat speed and pitch speed and things like that. But those are the only pieces I can't afford.
Yeah.
What is that? What's that Italian? Rapsodo? It's the Italian name, or Rapsico? I don't know. Maybe it's Japanese. But I can't afford those, and I can't certainly afford an electronic camera and all these other devices that pro teams have that cost $500,000. But I can't afford to use my video camera on my phone and record kids every day in workouts.
Guys, the final comment that I'm going to have you make, just to help you prepare, it's not final yet, is I'm going to ask you, the last question will be about advice you give young coaches now they're going to get into coaching, especially maybe just starting. But before we do that, I want to ask each one of you this question, and that is, when you've got players in a game, and you've got 24 players or 20, whatever you have, only so many are on the field. How do you keep the other ones motivated? Are the things that you do on the bench, wherever it may be, to keep them motivated and also learning the game consistently? And I'll start with Coach Ayers since he was the last one before.
Well, that was a problem. I'm sorry, Mike. Can you hear that vacuum cleaner in the background?
Yeah. I was wondering what that was. I thought maybe you were having a hard time breathing or something.
Yeah, I have a comment, but I won't make it on this public broadcast. I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry. Hey, this is a podcast, man. We can do whatever we want. Well, to a point, but.
Several years ago, I came to the conclusion that our pitchers were better in the beginning of the season than they were towards the middle and the end. I'm thinking, why is that? And I don't know why almost instantly, well, we're not doing the same amount of work. We're not repeating our core philosophy, our core drills, our core stuff. So I thought, I've got to change this, because Illinois is noted for its weather. It's going to change today because it's Illinois. So I decided that during the games, and we may play 4 games, 5 days in a row or something, I've got to teach during the games. I just can't be sitting here. So the pitchers report to the bullpen, and during the games, during the half innings, we do drills. And every core drill that we have, we repeat during the half inning. It may only be 4 or 5 times, but we know it. They know the drill, and it repeats the drill. And it may be picks the first. It may be picks the second. It may be hockey puck curveball drill. It may be towel drill. It may be changeup drill with a playing catch with a partner. And we only may get 4 or 5 throws in. I get that. But at least they're getting back to training the mind to help you physically complete a skill. So I've changed that a great deal. One of the things, by the way, that changed our program, crossover symmetry, cord work. Great program. Can't say enough good things about it. Talk about scientific stuff and what we're using, and wow.
Coach Freeman, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Put me on mute, Pete.
I try to get people involved in the dugout that are in the dugout with charts. So they're relaying information to players as they come in. They're getting more to understand what's going on in the game, or, hey, this guy, when he follows up a breaking ball in the dirt with a fastball every time. So they're not going to fool you. So you look what to expect. Those kinds of things, that keeps them involved. I do the same thing with the occasional drills in the bullpen, because it's amazing. You tell your guys, okay, you're my first guy to come in relief. Keep an eye on the ball game. If a leadoff guy gets off, you get up and start doing your crossover symmetry. Your bands are loosen up. And then if another guy gets on in that inning, go out and just lightly start throwing. And then keep an eye on what's happening so that you're ready to go. And that's really hard for them, because half the time they're not even paying attention to the game. They're talking about everything else. But you've got to keep them constantly programming them and keep them involved in the game, so that, number one, they learn from other people's events, and also they're ready to come into the game when they're ready. One of the things that so many coaches do, when the defense is coming in, all the guys on the bench, they run down to the foul line and back. When you're in Washington, Oregon, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, it doesn't matter. In the spring, it's cold. And these kids will sit on the bench for 5 innings and not move, and then you want them to go pinch run, and they can hardly get to the bag. And they don't think for themselves. And so we have to think for them to keep them involved in the game.
Fantastic. Coach O'Connell.
Last, excuse me, I do everything basically these guys do. Parts, keeping kids active during the game, keeping them looking, watching opponent coaches' signs, things of this nature. but there's one thing that I haven't had to do since I've been at St. Francis, but I've done it at other schools that I've been at, and that's I have a situational hitting form that I use. It's quite complicated. Usually a player does it, but if you've got a parent that's giving you a lot of problems, I give the parent something to do during the game.
Yeah.
I put them to work, tracking pitches or doing our count chart or doing the situational hitting chart. And it's amazing how when they've done, especially the situational hitting chart, because what that does, that situational chart will really show the value of a player that doesn't show up in a scorebook like a 2-for-4 game. It'll show how many times he went from an 0-2 count to a walk or things of that nature, which things that don't show up in that box score. So it also keeps them. It's amazing that after they've done this for a while, how much they understand. Hey, wait a minute, maybe my kid shouldn't be out there. Maybe my kid isn't the cat's meow, as my wife's great aunt used to call it. And that's an important thing I do with charts.
Yeah, Coach O'Connell, real quick, if you can, we answered this in some ways, but Jen had asked, in practice, to keep, players focused, interested. We talked about some things. Add something else in there.
Oh, let me think. Let me pass this along, and I'll come back to me. Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. Coach Ayers, I want you to finish it off on your end with, coaches just getting into the game, maybe been in the game 2-3 years. Advice where you can speed up their ability to make less mistakes as a coach. What advice would you have for them that they should be doing? Oh, whoa, hang on. We unmute. Hang on. Go ahead.
Am I unmuted now?
You're good.
Number one thing I would say, I think Donny said it early, join the ABCA, American Baseball Coach Association. Join the BCA, Baseball Coach Association, high school. Join your local association, your state associations. There's a lot of great clinics given out there that really help. I know, I don't know why I did this. I was, in the early days of the ABCA, I got to know, and here's some names for you: Rod Dado, Jerry Kindle, Bob Bennett, John Scalinas, Les Miller, okay? Very influential, talking to these guys. Now, we were a lot smaller back then, but they really were helpful. Don't be afraid, young guys, to come up and approach some of these guys with gray hair and, ask them some questions. They'll probably be thrilled to talk to you.
It may turn into 45 minutes.
Yes. My son's was at Louisville. We're playing USC, and we're in the second game, and Rod Dado's out there. And he comes and grabs me and says, I want to show you around. Are you kidding me? Rod Dado comes to me and asks to show me around, show the Hall of Fame room, takes me through the locker room. Are you kidding me? That's what we need. Coaches need to help coaches. And if coaches don't help coaches, who do you think's going to? We all know that parents, sometimes, administrators, I don't know about that one. Who do you think's going to help coaches? So baseball coaches, young guys, you need to reach out to some of the older guys. They'll be thrilled. They'll probably be very happy to help you all they can, and go to clinics, buy some books. Ron Polk's book hasn't been mentioned today. Probably one of the basic great books on drills and skills and excuse me, organization there is in baseball.
You mentioned John Scalinas. A lot of people don't know who John Scalinas was out there, but all of you have probably read the thing that goes around the internet about 17 inches, about home plate and 17 inches. And that was a John Scalinas talk at an ABCA convention that I was at. And I think both of you guys were there as well.
Absolutely.
Listen to him give that live. It's a fantastic thing. If you're a young coach, go to the internet, see if you can find that. It's John Scalina's 17 inches home plate. Otherwise, there's a video of it somewhere, but otherwise it's pretty much printed out what he said about, the home plate has always been 17 inches. It's all about, it's not just so much about baseball. It's about how you coach. It's about life. It's about how you treat people and how you work in different situations.
Fantastic. I want to mention this. Obviously, Tom O'Connell is on the board of directors for the ABCA, but I bring that up because to give you an example, Tim Saunders is on, and he's the executive director of the BCA. He's been coaching for 40 years high school baseball, and that just gives you the example. He's been on the whole time listening, watching everything we do here. I just want to give him credit because those are the examples I love to see. People are constantly learning that have been in the game this long. So thank you, Tim, for joining us also. Donny Freeman.
Yes.
Talk about, advice to some younger coaches.
Well, just to tag on to what was already said, talk to coaches that have been around for a while. I coached football for over 30 years, and I'll tell you right now, between football and basketball coaches, and I have a lot of great friends, you ask them questions, it's really hard to get information out because they're afraid you're going to steal something from them. In baseball, all the coaches understand everybody borrows and shares this information. And what's even more important is that then you got to get the kids to do what you ask them to do. And we know that's not easy to do. So coaches are not afraid to share information. It doesn't matter if you're a pro coach, a college coach, a high school coach. You go up and say, hey, your team does this really well. What is it that you take your kids through? And like I mentioned before, 45 minutes, you will get a lecture, a free lecture, and they will tell you everything they do. So don't let that resource get away. You got people in your league. Some of the best friends I have on this planet are baseball coaches that were in the leagues that I coached on. We help each other out continually, share information, and just take advantage of that because trust me, you can't invent it all yourself.
Absolutely. Coach Saunders, I unmuted you. Look, add to that, and then I'm going to go to Coach O'Connell for the finish.
Well, I'll tell you this, watching these three today and watching all the other people you have, the thing that I like about the baseball profession and about great coaches, it doesn't have to be in just baseball, but I agree with Donnie. A lot of people say that about other sports. I've never coached another sport except for basketball at the freshman level, so I didn't get very high up. But they're promoters of the game. Great coaches are promoters of the game, and they hang with guys that are promoters of the game. And all the guys that Terry talked about, they were promoters of the game. The guys that Tom O'Connell talks about, they were all promoters of the game. And you know what? We have a bigger responsibility, and they've all proven it, than just working with our kids. Yeah, we want to make them great, but we want every kid, and they want every kid to have a great opportunity in that small amount of time that they have. And hats off to you guys. It was worth it for me to be on here. I love listening to these guys, and for what you're doing, Pete. I mean, it's awesome to we're just promoting the game, and that's why I say the legends, they end up being promoters, and their parents see it, their players see it. Maybe not right now, but they'll see it down the road. That was one of those people helped me out along the way, and that's what good coaches do. So
fantastic, love it,
Thanks,
Coach. And we're going to
Tim.
have Coach Saunders on the next high school show for sure. Coach O'Connell, finish it off for us.
Usually I sing at the end of dinners
Oh,
and banquets,
no.
but I'm not
Let me
going to
get the
do
mute
that.
button.
I'm not going to do that. Get the mute button here. I can do an Irish farewell song for you.
Yeah,
Timmy Saunders, my assistant coach at the last ever U.S. Olympic Festival being held in Colorado Springs. I've been friends with Tim since then. Great guy. But I have to end with a nice, funny little story. Tim and I had the North team in the Olympic Festival, and we talked about what we were going to do for signs, and we decided we'd put everything down on a piece of paper so the kids, because we only had the kids for a couple weeks, and they'd never played for us before, so we want to make sure there was no communication problems. So we put everything down on paper, what we were going to do during the festival and with our signs, and hung them up in the dugout during practice, and Tim forgot to take them down, and we were wondering why all the way through the festival everybody had our signs. It seemed like we couldn't steal, we couldn't bunt, we couldn't get away with anything, and we found out after the last game was played. we left him in the dugout, and that's why we didn't do very well. But Tim, great coach. It was great to get on this show with friends like Terry Ayers and Donny Freeman, who's going by a pseudonym at Min. I think that's because he's wanted by the FBI. But
That's
other than
it.
that, great
Witness
show.
protection.
Great people. Love talking baseball. Love working with young coaches. I think it's very important that we do that. I'll piggyback on what Tim said. Share the game.
All right, man. That is it, folks. And listen, we knew this was going to be a great show with these three great coaches, not only coaches, mentors, but just great people in the game of baseball. I want to thank Tom O'Connell, Terry Ayers, Donny Freeman, also Tim Saunders for joining us. And special thanks to Brian Kroc, Lineup Media Group. Thank you to them for putting up the podcast and the show. Don't forget, if you missed the show, you want to go back and listen to it. It's on YouTube at Peter Caliendo. We're going to have the audio on Facebook, which will be on baseballoutsidethebox.com. Check us out tomorrow, 1 p.m. Central Time. We will be with Ernie Young, former manager of Team USA, Olympian, also big league player. We're going to have a great show there. So join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. if you want to listen to Ernie Young. He is outstanding. So, folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us in the U.S. and around the world. There's a show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds that love to challenge the status quo. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo. See you on tomorrow's show. God bless you all. Stay safe. And I know a lot of you would be already back on the field, and most will be. So see you on tomorrow's show.
Take care, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.